Happy Saturday, y'all. Josh is Severe Weather. I hope you're having a great day. My thoughts and prayers are with those of you in Central California, especially the Kern River area that are dealing with catastrophic river flooding right now. Just a very sad situation to see something like this occurring, but unfortunately, that is the sign of the times here with some extreme weather out west. Now, I'm going to talk about how this storm is going to impact us farther to the east. We are going to see the storm moving quickly into the plains this weekend and dropping southeast early next week. And we're going to have all kinds of weather impacting many places here from the Dakotas and Montana on eastward into the northeast and New England, as well as southeast Canada. And on the warm side, some severe weather expected here to begin developing later today, and especially tomorrow, Sunday, we could have some severe weather and even a threat for a few tornadoes across the southeast. And that continues Monday into parts of central Florida. In between, there will be enough cold air in place for some wintry weather over parts of the eastern Ohio Valley into the mid-Atlantic states and Carolinas. However, it's probably going to be short-lived. By the time we're looking at Sunday night into Monday morning, we're likely just dealing with heavy rainfall across the northeast coastline, I-95 on eastward, in places that are probably getting sick of seeing rain this winter slash spring slash, I don't even know what it even is anymore at this point. But one reminder tonight, if you could, please turn your clocks forward 1 hour before going to bed. You don't want to get to things late tomorrow. I know it's going to throw all of us off. I've got a kid. I've got a schedule I'm set. It's going to mess my body up. I get it. And I'm not a fan of daylight savings, but I guess if I am a fan of anything, it is being able to do a little bit more after work in the warmer months of the year because it's lighter later. But I'm an early riser, so it's not going to help me. It was light out when I got up this morning before 6. Tomorrow it's going to be dark. So anyway, just my little complaint for the day, I guess. But no one wants to hear complaints anyway. What does that even accomplish? All right, so here is our big storm that slammed into California yesterday, spinning across Montana, and we're going to see this upper low moving eastward and eventually diving southeastward on Monday. And as it dives southeastward, it'll intensify and become negatively tilted. That's going to allow the surface low to actually get wrapped up into that trough and get pulled northwestward towards southern New England. And that's going to happen Monday night into Tuesday. And you can kind of see a little bit of a sign of that happening right now with a storm that's leading out and moving across Pennsylvania and New York. It is negatively tilted, but this is going to get kicked out by the bigger storm. So the little bit of a storm that we're still dealing with here in the Northeast early here on Saturday is going to be getting kicked out by the bigger storm, which is going to move eastward tomorrow across the Great Lakes and then into the Northeast Monday and Monday night. Now, as we do have fast flow aloft, we are going to see enough instability for localized severe weather beginning this evening across parts of the deep south, especially the Red River Valley, and then tomorrow farther east over Dixie Alley and then spreading into Georgia and northern Florida towards the evening hours. And I'm going to get a little bit more into that. Right now, most of the map is showing major flooding over central California with widespread devastating and catastrophic flooding for many on the Kern River as well as around Morro Bay as well. And heavy snow still impacting the Sierra Nevada, and the snow melt is really what's causing the flooding, not just the rain that's falling, but the fact that you have such a feed of tropical moisture off the Pacific going up and over and loosening up that heavy snowpack over the Sierra Nevada that is melting down into the river valleys. And as the elevation drops, all that water piles up and causes the water level to quickly rise to basically, this isn't just a river flood. This is a flash flood where the water is climbing so quickly that it is encompassing homes and putting people's lives in danger. So if you're the praying type, please pray for these folks. I mean, this is a very serious setup here in Central California. And some of that flooding will also impact northeastern Nevada as well to a lesser extent. And we'll have winter weather over Utah, especially the southern mountains, and western Colorado and southwestern Wyoming. That is going to come to an end here early in the weekend. The bigger storm bringing blizzard conditions to the north central states is going to move eastward, and it will not produce blizzard weather over the upper Midwest, but we will have some snowfall. This storm will actually kind of lose some steam by the time it gets over to Lake Michigan tonight into tomorrow. But then as it heads into the northeast and the jet stream strengthens, it will begin to pick up a coastal low, and they'll merge into one bigger low pressure system off of Long Island and southeastern parts of Massachusetts Monday night into Tuesday. And I'm going to show you the graphic for that. This cold air that's in place across the northeast is going to allow that precipitation as it spreads along and east of the Smoky Range into the Blue Ridge. to produce some winter weather and primarily some wet snow for a few hours, maybe mixing with sleet and even some frozen rain. Eventually going over to some rain here by Sunday night, but the front end late tonight and especially early tomorrow could produce some travel issues here in southwestern Virginia, northwestern North Carolina, and into the higher elevations of West Virginia. By the time it moves eastward, it's going to encounter some warmer air tomorrow in the afternoon, and by then we're probably talking pretty much all rain. Here's our excessive rainfall outlook, and we do have a slight risk of flooding over Arkansas, the Memphis area later today and tonight. Continued flooding over parts of the Sierra Nevada and the foothills region here, as well as northern Cal today. Tomorrow, we continue to see that area getting hit hard with locally heavy rainfall. Central Cal will see lesser amounts of rain, fortunately, but still river flooding. And then potentially some heavy rain over Alabama and Georgia tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow night. But severe weather could be a bigger issue. And then as we look into Monday, we do have a threat for some excessive rain across the New York City metro area, Long Island, southern New England, and another threat for heavy rain over northern California. So this area has shifted northward, but it definitely brings us some more concern for flooding over parts of NorCal and maybe southwestern Oregon on Monday, as the pattern remains extremely wet over the west coastal states. Here's our severe weather outlook today. We have a slight risk from southeast of Tulsa, so like the Ouachita Mountain Range here, across to Little Rock. And there is a small chance that we could see a few tornadoes even into the, excuse me, folks, even into the Dallas-Fort Worth metro and northeast Texas, and then spreading into Texarkana, but a bigger risk of severe hail and wind. And some of that hail could be large and intense over southern parts of Arkansas and far southeast Oklahoma this evening. And the area in that significant severe risk is up to about 1 million folks. So Pine Bluff, Hot Springs, Benton, Bryant, and Camden in Arkansas. And over 11 million are in a 5% risk for some severe wind from Dallas and just east of Oklahoma City all the way over to Memphis, Tennessee later on tonight. Tomorrow, that threat for severe weather drops south and east all the way down to the Gulf Coast in the evening. And we've got over 7.5 million people at a slight risk for severe weather. And that includes a 5% risk of tornadoes from around Mobile and Pascagoula, Mississippi on eastward towards Columbus and Phoenix City and over to about Valdosta and Albany, Georgia, Dothan, Alabama, even sneaking close to Tallahassee and down to about Valdosta in Georgia. We do have a bigger risk of severe wind and also a large risk for hail, which involves over 2 million folks. Significant hail possible in Mobile, Gulfport, Pensacola, Hattiesburg, Biloxi, Laurel, Mississippi, getting close to Enterprise and Dothan later in the day. But the Florida Panhandle could see some crushing hail here towards tomorrow evening, and that's something we'll definitely have to watch. Day 3, the risk for severe weather does lessen some, but we also have over 10 million folks that could have some form of severe weather. Places like Jacksonville and Lake City on down to I-4. So Ocala, Orlando, Daytona, Deltona, all the way to Tampa, St. Pete, Melbourne, Florida in the afternoon. And this could impact folks around Sawgrass that are leaving the tour event here this weekend in Jacksonville, Florida. A 5% chance at this point. I would not be completely shocked to see potentially a severe thunderstorm watch in here, maybe an increase to some greater severe probabilities. The Storm Prediction Center mentions that, but there is uncertainty regarding how widespread these storms will be. So not everybody's going to see storms in this region that turn severe, but those that do certainly have that risk of seeing severe wind and hail. So in Florida, you could be in for some active weather. All right, here's the European model. You can see one storm leaving the northeast this morning. Storm 2 moves across Minnesota tonight into the Great Lakes tomorrow. And here is our severe weather threat over the southeast. Actually, let me roll it back so you can see it starting here this evening at 6 o'clock over southeast Oklahoma, northeast Texas, then diving southeastward. There'll be somewhat of a convective system that moves southeast and then regenerates tomorrow over the southeast. You can also see the potential for some wet snow over western Virginia around Roanoke and Lynchburg and on up to about Lexington and Buena Vista and all the way up to the Shenandoah Valley here in the afternoon. But that does shift over to rain, and most of this snow is going to be wet snow. And unless you're in the higher elevations, I don't think you see a widespread sticking snow, at least greater than an inch. We could see, though, in the early morning hours tomorrow around Boone and Blowing Rock and all the way down to close to Morganton, that threat for maybe a little bit of frozen precipitation, not just snow, but freezing rain and sleet. Although temperatures are going to be very marginal at the freezing mark and climbing, so primarily going over to rain. So just a few hours, especially right before it gets light out tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning, where it could be frozen. By the afternoon, we're just dealing with a chilly, damp afternoon setup into tomorrow night and into Monday morning over the East Coast. Now, this low pressure is going to intensify. So what happens is the low kind of moves off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina later tomorrow night. And when it gets to about the Outer Banks Monday morning, it starts deepening. We've got a trough here. You can kind of see these dash blue lines kind of going more negatively tilted, meaning it's tilted from northwest to southeast geographically. And that negative tilt allows for strengthening over the Gulf Stream, and then also allows the storm track, rather than going out to sea, to come back up from the south. And the shape of the coastline over New England favors a storm coming in from the south and southeast to kind of hit you directly perpendicular to the coast. As the low deepens, winds crank up and intensity of snow is going to pick up Tuesday morning. So what is going to be a very heavy rain event for coastal New England and Long Island late Monday night, early Tuesday morning, looks like as that trough tilts and strengthens, will shift that rain over to wet snow, and perhaps significant wet snow over eastern Long Island, Connecticut, even upstate New York, Massachusetts, everywhere except maybe far southeastern Mass, where it's a little bit too warm to see anything but rain. But wind-driven rain. I mean, we're talking a nasty nor'easter here Tuesday afternoon into Tuesday night. Then that low will eventually kind of drift out. There is uncertainty as to what Wednesday looks like. At this point, I would still count on there being disruptions in travel and nasty weather in the morning, at least for New England, but improving around New York City and Long Island Wednesday afternoon and drying out across the rest of the East, where it will be a very unseasonably chilly day. Even Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, we have some lake-enhanced snow and mountain snow all the way down to West Virginia. So nonetheless, it's going to stay cold into Wednesday morning before we have a reprieve coming on Thursday, but another storm to keep an eye on later next week over the Midwest and eventually into the eastern U.S. later next week. Let's zoom in so I can give you all some more details. Here's our morning storm that is kind of tapering off. Still some wet snow expected this morning here in Jersey and around the 5 boroughs, but snow mixed in. It's not going to bring you a whole lot. Really, most of our snow is elevation based here in the Catskills, in the Katanning region here, and into the Berkshires. And this is 7 a.m. So by the time a lot of you guys are even watching this video, it's going to be pretty much wrapped up here with rain ending in South Jersey and just a few scattered showers and flakes this afternoon. But our low is moving away. The instability trough is starting to move away and heights are rising. So not a huge deal at this point. Let me take this back a few runs so we can look farther into the future. Oops, 60. The HRRR model 4 times a day does go out further than 18 hours. And you can see this is really a nothing storm tonight, tomorrow morning. But here's our next one moving in tomorrow afternoon to the mid-Atlantic region, Pennsylvania, and the central Appalachians in New York State. Look how warm it is over the lake. It's actually showing rain over Lake Ontario as some warm air moves in ahead of our trough, which is going to eventually cool things down from the column down. Now, looking at the HRRR model farther west, you can see Storm 1 leaving. Here's Storm 2 over the Dakotas and into Nebraska and Iowa this morning. Some frozen precip around Omaha and some light rain around Kansas City. That is going to move east, and we'll see significant snow over central Iowa and especially up into Minnesota and Wisconsin. And that moves into Chicago here. May start out as some rain this evening, but shifts over to some wet snow by late this evening and overnight. All the way down to I-70, we do see a little bit of wet snow, but it starts as rain. This is not a big snowfall by any stretch, but as our storms move across the Tennessee Valley here later tonight, it'll be cold enough along and east of the Appalachian, the Continental Divide here, where that precip is going to fall in the colder air and produce maybe a brief burst of some wet snow in the foothills region of North Carolina and up into southwestern Virginia. The HRRR tries to make it snow all the way to about Durham and northern Wake County. I really think this could be overdone, but I wouldn't be shocked if a few flakes or sleet pellets fell. Really not a big deal at this point. We'll continue to avoid any accumulation, I think, in the Raleigh area. But if you get up into places like Surrey and Stokes County of North Carolina, and then across to maybe around Danville and Rocky Mount, Virginia, and all the way up to Roanoke, I do think there is a chance early tomorrow to see the ground coated with some wet snow. I don't think it's going to be a big deal, but something we'll have to keep an eye on. In the higher elevations, we could see a few inches of accumulation. But you can see kind of how things kind of lag here. Our circulation still going over Wisconsin tomorrow afternoon, but the main storm is already jumping towards the coast here, South Carolina in the afternoon, and then North Carolina at night. And this is then just going to be a heavy rain event with severe weather moving out across northern Florida. This storm here in Chicago early Monday morning, late Sunday night does kind of peter out, and the main event starts taking over the East Coast. And farther south and east, you all can kind of see this again here. Here's our area of storms to watch for here. Later on this evening, we could have some hailers here in southern Arkansas and locally strong winds. And then that moves southeast into Mississippi overnight. Kind of a second wave right behind it, moving into the Memphis area and towards Batesville and Oxford, Mississippi here before daybreak tomorrow. So wave 1 is going to fall apart over parts of northern Georgia, but it will rain hard. Wave 2 should take over here around 8-9 Central, 9-10 Eastern, and then the afternoon looks to be more intense over southeast Alabama and southern Georgia. This is at about 5-6 o'clock here tomorrow, with some potential hailers back here across Mississippi, moving all the way down to Mobile and the Mississippi Gulf Coast here in the evening. And northern Florida will probably have a severe thunderstorm watch here, including southern Georgia as well tomorrow evening. So did show you all the European here. Here's a look at the Northeast. And here's kind of storm 1 moving out very quickly. Storm 2 moves in. You can see low pressure moving up the coast and aiming at the islands here, especially Martha's Vineyard. Early on Tuesday morning, that low deepens and winds will intensify. And so the rain is actually going to switch over to wet snow, and Rhode Island, eastern Connecticut, and eastern Long Island could have blizzard conditions briefly. And when I say blizzard conditions, that means the wind is going to be really the big deal out of this. But even some heavy snowfall rates over an inch per hour, according to the European. The GFS looks a little bit different. It's farther east with the low, but it still has that band of snow over Connecticut. It does not have blizzard conditions back in here, though. It mainly has a coastal low. The Icon German model, I don't know why it does this, but goodness. Has a big snowfall, but it is farther north and west. It does spread into Long Island and into Rhode Island here by Wednesday morning, but it's a little slower to evolve. I hate how it jumped over here to the snow. I will show you snow, but basically the Icon is farther inland. The Gem and the European here have a pretty sizable storm, and every model is going to differ here. And what falls at a 10-to-1 ratio doesn't appear to be what's actually going to stick. Here's kind of your sticking snow here. Let me give you a storm total. And you can see we do have the potential for over 20 inches of snow somewhere here in western New England and eastern New York State, but even potentially some snow all the way down the Long Island. This is the 6Z. The 0Z was much more intense. So you can see the model is now trending a little bit farther off to the north and west and away from Long Island with the heavier snow. And spreading that snow more into southwestern Vermont, western Mass, eastern parts of New York, around Albany, and especially in the higher elevations on both sides of the Hudson River. So a big snow for some here. If we look down into the mid-Atlantic, you can see the model is also trying to output just a little bit of snow back here in western Virginia, and especially in West Virginia and up into western PA. Central PA, State College on east, not going to be much here. Southeast PA gets gypped once again, and New York City maybe sees an inch. And I had this total depth change of snow. This is how much is actually going to stick. Maybe 15, 16 inches in northwestern Connecticut and southwestern Mass, and maybe 17, 18 inches of accumulation on the ground southwest of Albany and up here north of Ulster County. So in the Catskills primarily. New York City only showing about an inch or two accumulating, maybe 3 to 4 over Long Island, possibly even 6 out at the Hamptons. That was on the 0Z of the European. The 6Z of the European is the what is going on here? Oh, of course, it kicked me out. All right, let's do this again. All right, European, high res region, Northeast, and depth change. There we go. So the depth change is what actually accumulates. And you can see right now the new European model is already starting to cancel the storm for Long Island and southeastern Mass, and has most of our accumulation occurring here back 14, 15 inches. So it still agrees on this area getting the heavy storm and this area getting blizzard conditions, but does not agree on as much snow over far southeastern Mass. So we still have time for this forecast to change. That I am going to say with confidence. But again, I think the farther away from the coast you get, the more snow you see. The closer to the coast you are, the more wind and rain you see. Either way, it's going to be a disruptive storm. Finally, in southeast Canada, we do see the potential here in New Brunswick around St. John's and even Fredericton of seeing potentially 20 centimeters or more of snow. And even over to Moncton, about 16 centimeters of snow. For Nova Scotia, not as much. Halifax on west. PEI is going to kind of get missed as well here with only potentially between 12 and 14 centimeters of snow. But when you get to far eastern Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, some of the favored areas could pick up over 20 centimeters and maybe even as much as 30 centimeters of fresh snow here. But this storm is more going to be for New England and less so for southeastern Canada. But if you are in eastern Nova Scotia, I do think you get another bullseye here of some heavy snow. We'll look at Philly real quick, and the European says pretty much next to nothing as far as snow over the next 6 days. A few ensemble members show maybe an inch, but we would have to get pretty lucky. Now in Central Park, it's a little bit better here. Potentially, we see a couple of inches. Some of that actually is falling this morning with Storm 1, but more so with Storm 2. But you do still see a few outlying solutions that give you a quick burst of between 6 and 12 inches in New York. But the average of the models is lowered with time, and the majority of the ensembles say it's not really going to be New York City storm, unfortunately, if you want to see that. Now, a different situation here, though, if you get out to the Hamptons, Gabreski Airport in West Hampton does see an average from the models of 2 to 3 inches of snow, but potentially a few outlying solutions give you over a foot if things wrap up and you guys get hit with a heavy band of snow on Tuesday. So that is possible. But the average is certainly a lot lower, and this certainty level is super low. I mean, anywhere from next to nothing to as much as 6 to even 14 inches of snow. And Boston sees that uncertainty as well. Now, Boston is going to get accumulation according to the ensembles. Some are still on the low side, less than 5 inches, but the average is about 8. And there are several solutions at Boston that do show around 10 to 15 inches, with a few outliers higher than that. And finally, Albany, New York, you are definitely getting snow. The very least it shows is 3 inches, but majority of the models show 10 to 15, and a few solutions show over 20 inches of snow as well. Winds are the other story here. You'll see winds are going to be battering Massachusetts. Here are gusts potentially to hurricane force on the North Shore up from Boston. Now, Boston could see 60-mile-an-hour gusts. You get up to Marblehead and farther up to Gloucester, and we see gusts over 74 miles per hour. This could be a very destructive storm if this model is in fact correct. The islands will see 60 to 65, and this is going to be Tuesday afternoon. And then up the main seacoast, Bar Harbor could see 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts. But really, it's right there in southeastern Mass is who sees most of the wind. But even behind the storm, down into the mid-Atlantic, Philly and Baltimore and D.C. could have gusts over 40 miles per hour. The mountain ranges could have over 50 here Tuesday afternoon as our trough swings through. And it stays windy into Wednesday, as you guys can see, as our storm moves out to sea. It's still a windy day on Wednesday with gusts over 40 miles per hour across the Delaware Valley, the Hudson Valley, and western parts of New England before things settle down some on Thursday. And in Canada, you guys can also see that we'll have some intense winds pounding Nova Scotia and southern New Brunswick with wind gusts over 80 kilometers per hour possible. The European shows kind of an eye-like feature here with this deep low, and then it does kind of weaken some. So as we get to Wednesday night and Thursday, these winds do come down, but your worst wind should be Tuesday night into the first part of Wednesday morning as well. I did show you guys the southeast, but I did want to show you the potential for some severe weather. As you can see, the indices do climb here later on this evening and do favor severe weather tomorrow over southeastern Alabama and back into Mississippi and even possibly central Louisiana tomorrow afternoon. This is around 3 o'clock Central Time, 4, 5, 6 o'clock. And this is the lifted index, which indicates the amount of lift that is there for hailers and stronger winds to develop. There's not going to be a huge tornado threat at this point, but there is some helicity to worry about in the afternoon around Mobile Bay and Pensacola, right towards the end of the day, and then stretching across northern Florida in the evening. I don't think this is a widespread tornado outlook, but I would be a little concerned if the NAM is correct on the central Gulf Coast region and maybe even north of 31 North here. So that is it. Freddie is about to make landfall again in Mozambique. The pressure is about 975 millibars, so about a category 2 in America. We can see the GFS weakens it inland and then takes it back out to sea here on Tuesday and right down the Mozambique Channel, close to the west coast of Madagascar. And it should still be on the map next weekend, but it will be losing tropical characteristics. Just a remarkable storm that started February 3rd, northwest of Australia, and has found its way making a cruise and 2 stops each in Madagascar, Mozambique, and then heading back out to sea to the southeast. Man, I could talk about that all day, but I know not too many of you folks are really that obsessed with the tropics, but it could be a busy tropic season again here in the Atlantic. With El Nino forming, that could change the shape of what happens, but it could be another busy tropical season. So we'll talk more about that as we get later into the spring and towards the summer when I have more confidence. I'd rather do that than try to throw something out there now that's just going to end up looking pretty bad because it's still too far out to really get a good gauge on it. But I am going to take tomorrow off, and Monday morning we'll have another video coming. You may see a community post, so if models make a big shift, you're going to hear about it on my community page. And to do that, I would like for you to subscribe so that you don't miss that opportunity. Thank you so much for your time today. I want to give all the glory to God who allows me to do this every day. And I would like to say that as a believer in Christ, that I feel like I've been called to do this. And I want to read a quick passage from 1 John 5:21. Dear children, keep away from anything that might take God's place in your hearts. And we've been commanded as believers to put God first and to take all the rest of the noise and drown it out. Attacks from Satan, things from the enemy, things that pull us away from God, politics, entertainment, sports, things that really kind of keep us from serving God in the kingdom. I'm not saying don't enjoy life. Believe me, I have my vices just like everybody else. But when I'm doing things like the weather, when I'm serving God, I have to remind myself every day that God needs to come first. He needs to be in my heart first, and everything else I need to just pray about and allow God to help me walk through the noise that is out there, worldly and fleshly desires. And if you are a believer, I'm happy to pray for you and help you to as you battle these desires every day, because I know I certainly do. I have a university with a sports team that I pull for. That's important, but it's nothing compared to what God has done for me. And I just have to remind myself every day, and I'm happy to pray for you if that's your situation as well. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I know the sleep schedule tonight's going to be messed up, but I know we're all looking forward to seeing the sun out there later in the day as well. So talk to you again on Monday. God bless you. Have a great day.